Hello, and welcome to WarsawJS number 76, as usually on the second Wednesday of the month. So today the WarsawJS Meetup organizing team is, besides me, Ania Dławichowska and Maciej Machniewski. Hey Sławek, nice to see you. First comment from Sławek. Hey, nice to meet you today. There is also Luisa Buta in the background, who is doing all the streaming and helping us with technical tasks. There is also Mirek Stasiak, Łukasz Basaj helping us. And yeah, beginning from the start, what is WarsawJS and what is this for? So WarsawJS is basically a nice community where everyone can learn from each other and teach others how to be better programmers. So it's both for new developers who'd like to learn more, and also senior developers learn communication with teaching others how to be, let's say, better in some particular part of JavaScript. We also share our experience, knowledge, and create an environment of mutual respect. And for this reason, we have a code of conduct. The code of conduct is really important because it gives us directions how to communicate so we don't offend anyone. And this is important because we want to have a nice place where everyone feels well. And if you violate this code of conduct, then unfortunately it's possible that no more networking on Remo will be possible for you or on Slack. So we are currently over 5,000 people on Meetup. You can subscribe to our Meetup at meetup.com/WarsawJS. Then you will get notifications about our new events. And if you go to warsawjs.com, there is a button in the center. And when you click this button, you will get invitation to WarsawJS Slack, where you can constantly get support from other developers and share your experience with JavaScript. Today's sponsors are 10 Clouds, Allegro Tech, Fresha, PackHelp, PostClick, Prisma, Sumo Logic, and Xfang. Some of them you can meet at WarsawJS Remo today. And that's the place I would like to invite you all. But I will first give you some incentive. There is a WarsawJS contest, and the contest is really simple. You just join Remo. You just go to Remo, and when you get to this platform, you can sit next to me, and the person who will talk to me will get a JetBrains license. That's as simple as that. So that's me alone in the room at Remo. If you go there, it's the link is on YouTube. You can see it now. If you scroll upwards on YouTube chat, there will be on this Sunday there will be WarsawJS for beginners, our 51st workshop. There are 3 groups and a lot of empty places, so there is still a lot of room for you if you're interested in learning JavaScript from the beginning. So it's this Sunday, and this will be a 5-hour workshop with professional senior developers who can teach you how to program in JavaScript from beginning. So this is our initiative. It's paid. It costs like $15, so it's not very expensive. You get for this 5 hours of good training with these experts. So, ending my presentation, there will be 3 speakers today. Mateusz Chrzonstowski, who will speak on clean architecture in JavaScript. Piotr Sławiński, his subject is what the hell is Hasura? And Jacek Migdał, who will share his experience on early employee path from launch to IPO. Yeah, that's the agenda for today. I also have a question for you before we start. last month we had a discussion panel and we got feedback. It's great that there is a discussion panel, and simultaneously we get a feedback that, hey, the event was actually too long because it took over 4 hours. So I have a question. Do you think if we should have a discussion panel as a separate event? If you are interested, please just write us a comment. I don't know. Even on Facebook, on YouTube, and then we will know that there is some demand on the discussion panel. If not, then we won't make another event. That's as simple as that. Okay, so thank you very much, and let's welcome Mateusz Chrzonstowski. Mateusz, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear well. How are you, Mateusz? Are you okay?
Superb, as always.
Yeah, I can hear that your microphone is working well, so that's awesome. So now 25 minutes for you. There will be a short questions and answers session after that. So good luck, Mateusz.
Thanks. 25 minutes, okay. That was surprising a bit. Do you see my slides? I think you can't see them yet. Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot hide this navigation bar because I'm sharing just a particular Firefox tab, so I cannot do anything about that. Okay, today I'm going to talk about clean architecture in JavaScript. It's not about fully blown clean architecture in the meaning of proposed by Uncle Bob Martin, but it will be more about code organization, how to improve your daily your code base, your daily code you work on. So let me start with a disclaimer. Context is important, as you probably know, and Google is fortunately smart enough to guess the context of the end user. So here, Google assumed that someone who typed remove child from parent with fork is not a child murderer, but someone struggling with system processes. But I don't want you to guess my context, so here it is. My name is Mateusz. My surname is hard even for Polish people. Here is the link to this presentation. All slides are already online, so you can enjoy them separately, independently from what I'm presenting. And what else? I'm having some Udemy courses, also on JavaScript, also touching the architecture there. And I work on Polish-American startup called Starburst. Surprise, we are recruiting. So yeah, that's the thing. I'm working with React Codebase, and I used to work with React Codebases for last 3 years, I believe. Previously, I worked mainly with Angular. So this is an important remark for the purpose of future slides. Another remark is that this presentation doesn't cover all the cases. It's rather for cases when reading code is much more frequent than writing code. So it's rather about big web apps, business projects. It's not about a single person, one-man army project you are doing in your spare time. Yeah, it's rather like that. When you have other cases, when you don't need to read code so frequently, you can follow different patterns. But I still believe some of things presented would work for you as well. So another way of saying what is the presentation about is to say what it is not about. So it's not about a new JavaScript framework. But yeah, this slide still touches a sensitive topic. I feel it like each time something new appears, we are throwing away all the things we already know and just start using all these new fancy features. And the reality is that it's not always the best approach, and I will try to prove it in the next slides. So, well, as I said, there are plenty of new things. We are throwing back away old things, but fortunately or unfortunately, how to say that, you name it, since 2016 around, there was that fancy article I enjoy reading each time. Since 2016, I can say React is top one when it comes to front-end frameworks. For maybe not frameworks, React is a library, front-end solutions, right? So I'm also having another talk which I try to show regularly about front-end overview. And each time I'm presenting, I'm trying to refresh some slides. I'm checking how many NPM downloads a week React has. So for instance, I was presenting personal front-end overview at the beginning of this year, and it was like 7 million downloads a week. And nowadays, it's like 9 million downloads a week, while Angular and Vue are like 2 million downloads a week. So React is like the top one solution, first thing which comes to your mind when creating a new app. But unfortunately, as I said, React is a library, not a framework. So it's not providing you an overall guidelines how to design your code around. Okay, and let's start with some tips how to organize the code, right? As I said, let's start with something simple, like closer to a single file, a single module, because file in JavaScript is a module, as you know from ES6. So let's start with some patterns which can help you with at single module level. So here is the example code from the official docs from Material UI. Material UI is a solution which allows you to provide some visual components which are according to Google Material Design System. So it's super easy to use this solution, but here, this example comes from the official docs, and I don't like this example. I understand it. They wanted to, let's say, present their solution, put it in the center of the file, but it's not helping you read. Yeah. Fortunately, they didn't put export keyword, but still, how would you think what would be the name of this file? In my opinion, name would be the same as the name of the component, so it would be rather my component JSX. So my assumption, my let's say way of thinking when seeing file named my component JSX is that it's all about my component, and entering a file which is designed like here, I'm not seeing my component at the top. I'm seeing some boilerplate code coming from framework and not the most crucial thing from the reader's perspective. So to improve readability in this file, the trick is simple. You can easily change the order of things. This is not any rocket science or something, but I've seen lots of code bases not following this very simple rule. And as I said, I have some Angular background, especially also Angular, including AngularJS. And as you probably know from the React world, you probably know Dan Abramov, but from the AngularJS, when I was learning it, the most, let's say, famous guy there was John Papa. And he came out with something called Angular Style Guide. And it is a great reading. In fact, it was for AngularJS, how to design your app, how to design your files in the app, and so on and so forth. It was really, some things there are outdated. They are just for Angular, but still, going through this shows you many other remarks which are still accurate, even for React applications. So the trick I've shown you previously, so switching the order of elements in the file, was also pointed out within this style guide. It was said in Angular there was something like binding and stuff like that. There was a rule from this style guide to put bindable members at top. And here is even the example from this story this style guide. So not only I'm entering a file which is probably named similar to this function, yeah, but also entering this file, I'm seeing just API at the top. Yeah, this is also here. There is also an alphabetical order, so I can familiarize myself with all the patterns in the code base. Like every file is sorted alphabetically, so it's easy to find a function. At first glance, I can see what is the API of this file. I have no clue yet what this go to session, refresh, or search functions do, but I can just figure out, okay, these are the three functions. There are also two additional state variables, let's say this way, and so I can quickly figure out, okay, so it's not a component, not a part of application I'm looking for, because I want, for instance, to call an API, and refresh, search, or go to session does not sound like getting, for instance, elements to read. Another trick, which is really easy also with React, especially with the newer version of Create React app, is to go for TypeScript. And I hope this it's just obvious. I don't want to dive into it more maybe, but I want to show you how you can easily with that first version of Angular, how easy it was to isolate, to encourage you to hide implementation details within the file. So here is the mix of AngularJS, which wasn't rely heavily on TypeScript, but a mix of this AngularJS with additional TypeScript types for it. As you can see, what I'm exporting from this file is something which won't be even presented in the JavaScript world. It's just an interface describing my service. There is just one method which returns an array of Avengers from that Marvel movie, right? And what was nice in Angular was that everything could work like that. So I'm having an implementation function which is this returns that interface. I'm also hiding implementation details of the particular object of its functions. I'm hiding all these things behind the function. I'm putting this function to Angular, so I'm not exporting anything but this interface. So API is just first 3 lines. I cannot importing this type. I cannot do much with it. I cannot even add any additional implementations. No, I cannot do that. But combining it together with Angular dependency injection, I'm sure I'm having a proper implementation somewhere hidden. So this is a strong encapsulation which really can help you. I was thinking about the examples for the React world of such an encapsulation, and it's not so easy to achieve, but we should observe context API, and maybe within the future changes in this API, it would be possible to hide even more from context, for instance, and export just an interface and hide every other things. I hope so. But this is just a thing, just a hint to make you think of encapsulation, or to make you think about organizing the code. So having all that, let's move one level above to the clean architecture, from clean code to clean architecture, more like architecture. So let's talk about organizing modules. And I haven't seen plenty of React code bases, but the one I've seen were rather organized in a similar way. And I really hate this way of organizing code base. So this approach is called folder by type. And as you can see, all the components are under, as you can expect, all the components are hide under components directory, all the services under services, and so on and so forth. You can add CSS or styles to the folders here, and so forth. I don't know. For me, it should be totally different. What are the problems with such an approach? So it's not like our business product owner is providing us requirements on Jira with our way of thinking. It's not he or she is not providing us as an administration, I want a new component. He is providing a ticket like, as a user, I want to handle a project. As a project, I want to maintain status or tasks within the project, and so on and so forth. So Jira tickets are feature-oriented, and our code base should be also feature-oriented to make it easy to locate to make it easier to locate a place where we should apply changes, when we should fix the issue, and so on and so forth. Every single issue, problem, or improvement are feature related. Our business language are expressed in the business language. We rarely have tickets like fix all the services. It's rather like as a user, as the admin of system, I want to get all my projects. So it's about a particular service, which service you have to figure out based on the business name. So organizing code with features is much better. Yeah, it's also would be problem of folder by type approach is that it's harder to find a reason, it's hard to apply changes, and so on and so forth. Also, it tends to grow. So, for instance, that components folder would be really huge, like 7 or more files is huge for me. So, what are the solutions? You can think of the architecture. There is the architecture keyword in the presentation title. So you can think, okay, so let's go with micro frontends. So it's not talk about micro frontends. Micro frontends solves a different issue. This is when you have independent teams, many teams with different frameworks, for instance, and you want to have independent deployments for these teams. It's also handy to use micro frontends when you have an old code base, for instance, in AngularJS, and you want to transition to start writing new features with React, and one by one you are replacing the old code base with the new one. So these are the problems you use micro frontends for. This won't help you as much organizing your. It can help, but not as much. Web components. This is another nice thing, but not for here. Not as the solution here. It's used. It is useful when you have, for instance, company-wide design system, so then you can easily share framework independently, some kind of visualization mechanisms in your apps, web apps. And another thing which can come to your mind as a React developer is maybe let's go with Redux, and we will organize everything around our centrally managed state. So no, I'm pretty sure it would lead you to adding additional 2 directories and making everything mentioned previously even worse. Also, Redux doesn't organize the app. It serves different purpose. This is rather a way of building the app, but I'm not going to talk about Redux now, because even the author of Redux, famous Dan Abramov, admitted that it's not a simple thing. So we shouldn't talk about it here, because this is not a topic for this presentation. Okay, but Dan Abramov is some kind of guru in this ecosystem, but did he talk about the architecture at any point in time? Well, yes, there is an official web page created by him, React file structure.search.sh. But when you enter this page, you see the guidelines like this. This is official screenshot I've taken today. So, well, yeah, it can help you, but not much. In my opinion, even for small app, you should start with folders by feature organization of code. And it's also something mentioned in the Angular style guide from John Papa. And In my opinion, it would be useful for all React developers to work for a moment with Angular, not as a punishment, so it can be a punishment a little, but especially AngularJS, but it's about teaching you some kind of general thinking. So Angular as a framework presents you a general approach, provides some building blocks. Even Angular command line interface creates app according to some patterns around organizing the code. And John Papa was a huge contributor at the beginning of the new version of Angular. He also created Angular style guide at the beginning for that, but it was converted to official Angular docs and so on and so forth. So the story was different. Yeah. Anyway, Angular has had some good patterns, and here from this style guide, I can share one pattern with you. A pattern which is called lift principle. This is the abbreviation. Each letter means something different. L stands for locate easily. So as the example I've provided previously, we have a user who manages projects, and projects have multiple tasks. So when you have to do something around projects, you should locate everything project related easily. Yeah, this is all about. And the I letter stands for identify the purpose. So the file purpose. So looking at file name, I should immediately know, okay, this file is probably for API calls. Okay, that file is probably for visualization, right? So this is I letter. Then we have F, which is for flat folder structure. And last but not least is T-dry. So try to stick to dry. But this T-dry is the last point for a reason, because previous points are more important. These first 3 points have a higher priority over T-dry. So from the readability perspective, maintainability, independent modules, it's sometimes better to copy a part of code, but it should be an exception. We should rather focus on this don't repeat yourself rule, dry, but not at a cost of any of the previous 3 rules. And this principle is general, but the implementation, this is like a framework, and the implementation is folders by feature structure. So we should name folders after the feature they represent, and it automatically provides us lift. So here is the example. So I'm reorganizing the previous code. I'm having projects, tasks, and user. Don't bother with the files now. This is the target solution, but let's move toward this target step by step. So one more thing. So having projects folder, I should also put all the CSS, all the images connected with projects here as well. But the specific JavaScript or TypeScript files, that's another thing to reason about. So what kind of files should be there? Let's go with Dan Abramov once again. He used to follow some kind of rule, like dividing components, React components, into presentational and container components. He changed his mind after some time, but the reason of changes was that some people were like fanatic about the solution. I think it's still worth having such a way of thinking. So before starting a new component, you can say to yourself, okay, should it be splitted into a big container component which handles manages the state, and small visual components which are presentational or dump components, or should I put everything in a single component? You should always ask yourself such a question before introducing something new, I think it's still useful. But yeah, I've seen so many examples like splitting table into smaller table and table view components, and it wasn't. I agree with Abramov here. We shouldn't be dogmatic here. Well, also, some kind of counter-example for this general rule is that sometimes these presentational components also need to serve to have small state, like just for their visualization. Let's say this way. But yeah. Also, the other comment from Dan in the article is that he switched to hooks because hooks let him do the same which this dividing was doing. So it helps separate stateful logic and other aspects of the component. Well, the problem with hooks is that I've never seen a nice way, a nice tutorial how to like on the concrete examples on how to share your logic with hooks. By practice, I came up with some personal examples and I want to share them with you, but I'm afraid many people end up doing another directory in this folder by type and put every hook there, which is not good, definitely. So what are my personal experiences with hooks? Sometimes they help separate business logic. For instance, I have recently created something called tags, labels, in my professional project. Let's say a project I'm working on a daily basis. And tag was coming with tag to the example structure I've shown you in the previous slides. It is something which allows you to mark either project or task, so it's some kind of common logic for them. So you can have a hook which encapsulates an API call for taking all the tags assigned to a business entity and to add these tags, remove them, and so on. So sometimes it is useful, but in most cases I've seen hooks rather for technical aspects. So instead of having use history and then going to homepage or use router and going to homepage, you can encapsulate it in your own custom hook, use homepage and go for homepage thanks to that hook. We also, on my project in my company, we are having something called use mount subscription, which helps you handling RxJS with so hooks, in my experience, are not a silver bullet, and yeah, they shouldn't. They were never thought they are. So what are the building blocks we can think of combining our app from them? What should they be? So Angular was having too many components, or not components in a way of React components, but building blocks, yeah. And React, contrary, has just a component which can be split into presentational and dump. It has also hooks, but hooks are a way of doing something with your component. And yeah, in general, it's hard to go with either Angular or React approach. We should find some kind of middle ground. So we should think what is important from our perspective, agree within all the team members, and use all over the code base. And my recommendation here is also inspired by style guide from Angular, but it's also inspired by well-known moved away way of organizing JavaScript front-end code, which is MVC, Model View Controller. What is tricky about MVC is when you type it in the Google Images, you will see plenty of diagrams, but each diagram is different. Each arrow is different on the diagrams. So there is no general MVC approach, I would say. But for React app, I would create something like model is just data from API and functions for getting this data for processing it. View should be JSX, and there we can think of presentational and container components. And controller is something like logic for the view. And here, coming back to particular example, particular files in this example, you can easily reason that project and project list is probably view, project service is the controller from MVC, and API TS contains all the data and functions for processing that data. So here is M, here is V, and there is C. And dividing in that way has many advantages. For instance, reusability of your code. You can easily switch from React, from JSX to, for instance, Vue with more like template approach, JSX behind the scenes, or Angular with pure template approach, and it would be really helpful. What I'm also finding handy is creating that index files. There are different opinions on that, but I like them as I treat this index each time as a contract for my whole folder. So let's imagine that I'm having project logic extracted to project service, right? So it's obvious that project service exports something and project TSX is importing it. And what the user, the other parts of my app, like app TSX, should import is not anything from this service, but just this project TSX. So I'm listing all the things I want to be want to be treated as a public API of my projects. I'm listing all the things under index TS. And that's a way of thinking, of organizing code which is maintainable, in my opinion. And here is the code example. This is the example of this project TS. So as you can see, I'm importing from the project API, I'm importing model. I'm also importing a logic. Logic is pretty simple. There is just a handler, listener for a click event implemented there. There is also something from this common, as you can expect. That means that kind of syntax means that common has its own index under the hood, but yeah, it can be skipped. And I'm importing useMount subscription from there, and this is how component can then look like. So this is a clear view from MVC. Component is responsible mainly for the way of presenting. Yeah, there is also state management, but all the logic is delegated to external services, to, for instance, API service and to business logic service. Let's call it that way. So I have a super easy way of replacing React with some other solution I want to, for instance, Angular, and I can use this click project. I can, instead of useMount subscription, I can use get projects in some Angular lifecycle method, and so on and so forth. So this is nice, and it helps you organize your code. And to sum it up, it also helps you write super nice tests. It's not a summary, it's maybe like other benefits. Tests you should write just for the click project function now with that approach. It's nice to use some kind of React testing library or something, but I've seen many problems with having more and more complicated components like context, history, routing, and so on. These things are always React-specific way of handling, of doing something, and the logic which should be tested is a totally separate way. So context history would be changed to something else with changes to a framework, with replacing React with something else, but click project would stay unchanged. So this click project would stay unchanged and well tested as it was. Then, yeah, as I said, it's easier to switch, and React is then responsible just for the view part of MVC as it should be, because as you can see in the official React docs is mainly a view library for seeing the things. Yeah, and you can get a shock, but seeing that approach at first glance, not everything in a single component, but after using it for a while, you are loving it and trying to do every single project that way. Coming one more level above, this is just the end of the presentation, coming to more like DevOps here, that structure is especially for projects which are using external design systems like Material UI, but when we are having our own design system or our own common libraries? Well, I would say for design system, the separate folder called layout and subfolders there, like button, like wizard, whatever pop-up, whatever component we can have would be useful. Also, style book would be useful there. But this is the bare minimum. As soon as we are feeling that there are going to be more projects using the same design system, I would go to monorepo for the first project using it, and for the future, extracting separate repository from this design system and maintain it separately. For big companies, I worked at Allegro for 2 years. We have a more concrete approach. We had a dedicated package with like CSS. Then you can introduce another layers around this CSS. So you can, for instance, introduce web components package, then React around this web components. So you are creating multiple adapters, let's say this way, and then your final application is using just this React and doesn't care of other, just this React and doesn't care of other things. But you can find your own way of doing this. I at Allegro we have some kind of this approach, but a little different. I can think of others as well. So this is like how to organize your code with multiple repositories, with also with solutions like you have authentication library you want to use everywhere, so you should also think about adapters approach for that, and so on and so forth. So that was an introduction to clean architecture, let's say that way. I think it can help you improve your code base, and we should end up with some kind of quotation. So here it is. It wasn't Paulo Coelho who said that, but yeah, some random internet dude. But I can agree with that opinion. I think it's simple to write everything in one file at the beginning, but it's not a simple code. It's just simple for writing, not for reading. If you like my style, I recommend you to joining my newsletter, mat3.github.io/trends. For Polish version, it's trendy. Można też wejść na trendy, tak? Each month I'm sending like a summary of all the videos, articles, IT-related articles and videos I was able to read or see. I'm sharing it once a month, and here is the link to this presentation, and that's all I prepared for you today. Thank you for your attention.
Congratulations, Mateusz! If you were live, you would hear a very loud applause now, because your presentation was absolutely fantastic.
It was too long. Sorry for making it longer than I yeah.
Yeah, so this is why I will have only one question to you. Obviously, I have a lot of other questions to you, and I hope you will stay with us on Remo. So when you go now to Remo, to your table, you could answer more of these questions. But I will read one question, which is, I think, really great. The Jewel of the Nile asked us, don't you think that a lot of presented problems are automatically solved when using Angular instead of React/Vue? If yes, why Angular loses the battle with React/Vue?
Yeah, so as I said, Angular is very good solution. It automatically introduces you some framework related way of thinking. It organizes your code. It enforces you to use to follow patterns. You cannot do different, but the setup is problematic. Also, it was the biggest fall of Angular was in the transition period between AngularJS and Angular. So then it was there were a lot of rumors. I remember that because I was observing that live. Let's say I was at the beginning of my career. I was really into AngularJS, but then it was like Google is moving out from Angular to totally new framework or something else. And another rumor was that Google is going with its own programming language called AdScript. Then it was a lot of rumors back then, and also React came out there back then, and it was something fresh. It at the beginning the performance was much better than AngularJS, and Angular wasn't there yet. And it was also a very important milestone for React to have React Native, and people started loving it, and it became a standard. And Angular lost the battle because of their bad decisions, right? This is my understanding of it. Also, it was harder at the beginning to start with Angular, especially with this command line interface and so on. So that was also problematic for people not knowing TypeScript to start immediately writing with it, and so on and so forth. So it was heavier. The way of introducing Angular was wrong, and React found a good time then to start.
Okay, so thank you very much for this response. I think it opens a lot of other questions, so it would be awesome if you joined Remo now. And thanks a lot again for this presentation, and hopefully you will join us also on next WarsawJS events, because that was excellent. And obviously, for those who haven't seen the presentation, there will be also a publication on YouTube, and as usually we do it this way. So thank you very much, Mateusz.
Thanks. I'm moving to Remo.
Okay, before I invite Piotr Sławiński, I want to share with you something really interesting. One of our sponsors, 10 Clouds, decided to organize a hackathon in 2 days. I will share my screen for a moment to show you this. So it's called the Codability Hackathon, and it's in 2 days, and it focuses on creating an app or a solution that would support people with disabilities. And it's by coincidence, Maciej Machniewski from WarsawJS is a person who suffers on some disabilities, and you can see a interview here on that event with Maciej, where he describes well what are the needs of people with some disabilities. So thanks for your attention. I will stop the sharing, and now I will invite here Piotr Sławiński. Piotr, are you with us?
Hey.
Hello, Piotr.
Can you hear me? Because I can hear you, most definitely.
I can hear you well. Last time we had certain problems with connection, I think.
Oh, please don't remind me. It was.
So this time I guess you're over prepared. So yeah, I well.
You'd be surprised.
So you just finished the slides. Okay. So can you show them?
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Am I sharing? No, not yet.
Not yet. We're
not
waiting.
Yet. Let's see the infinity well. Okay.
Okay. Inception.
Let's go.
So thanks, Piotr. Next 25 minutes for you. Good luck.
Okay. So some words of explanation. Last time I did talk on WarsawJS Meetup, I conducted some live coding and it went terrible. So fortunately, this time it'll be fine. So my name is Piotr. I'm a junior developer, that's important. And tonight I'll present you a talk on the subject of what the hell is Hasura. So that very question I asked myself when I first heard about it. And after a little bit of research, the results were that Hasura is I'm guessing I'm pronouncing it right, is an out-of-the-box GraphQL server which sits between your front end and your data. Data is in a Postgres database, and you access your data using Hasura's API, which in the end makes it a backend as a service. So you can be a front-end developer like me and have a full stackish experience when developing apps. And this could be it, but I really would like you to have the full experience of my presentations. So I will be showcasing some app, also Hasura itself. And please have in mind that what you're about to witness is going to be a pinnacle of improvisation or at the top, because I had zero time to prepare or to rehearse. So let's go. This is the official Hasura documentation. I hope you're seeing this in good enough resolution, and the text is not too small. If it is, just give me a sign. I don't know, call me. Myself, as a junior developer, I wanted to have the most essential experience with Hasura without looking all over internet on how to implement it. So I checked the documentation, and surprise, surprise, there's a one-click deployment on Heroku. Hasura, Heroku. I don't know what about you, but I can see a pattern. Okay, so what this does, is basically a step-by-step deployment or implementation of Hasura engine on your Heroku account. I'm not gonna do this right now because I have a pretty bad luck at live anything. So let's move on to a project I set up. So this is a Hasura on Heroku. I'm using a Heroku Postgres resource, and what it does, it actually spins up a Hasura graphical user interface with your own resources. So it's over here. It takes a while, and we're in the Hasura. So just as a reminder, we set up a Hasura GraphQL server on Heroku, and now we are checking it out. So over here we have a GraphQL playground. We can check out our queries. We have a tab for the data where we can create our database, put it, insert the data using a graphical interface. So here's a table I prepared. It's a table named movies. It has defined schema or fields in this database table. It's currently empty, but please be patient. It's going to be populated soon enough. We also, and that's actually enough for a basic implementation. We also have actions, which will enable us to do some business logic, like validation or data massaging, I guess, on our data, which is more suitable for more professional solutions. We have remote schemas, which is a way to utilize your already existing GraphQL services. or maybe implementing some payment APIs, as this nice graph shows, and also events, which is events which are triggered by a particular action on your data, like inserting or updating, deleting your data. And for the sake of this presentation, I only use the first two tabs. The last three is also it's still something to be discovered by me, so I encourage you to do it yourself. And what else? Okay, let's check out the code, because I have an app. It is the app is made using Next.js, and it's a very rudimentary movie database. So it's all in one component, so no fancy architecture over here, sorry. Or maybe this is the fanciest architecture, because junior developers write complicated code and senior developers write simple code. And this is simple, ergo this makes me Okay, enough with that off topic. So this is the template. All this over verbose classes are Tailwind CSS classes, so don't mind them. But the cool stuff happens over here below when we go to our script part of the component, because we are using Apollo to handle the GraphQL queries. We have a query for reading the data. We have a query for writing the data or mutating and removing the data, as well as something for subscribing to the data, subscription for a change in data. So everything is over here. And also the part responsible for the third-party API I'm using for the data gathering of the movie database. So, and if you see something if you see something in this code which might be a surprise for you, please have in mind that this code is 6 months old. For me, it's also a surprise. Okay, enough about the code. Let's check the app itself. Okay, it's, as I told you, it's very simple. You can check it out yourself if you can see the URL on the top. So let's find a movie, because it basically grabs a movie from the third-party API and puts it in our Hasura GraphQL server Postgres database. So do we have a movie in mind? Let's put inside my favorite movie. So let's check it out, how it looks like. Oh boy, it appears that it's not the only movie. There's more than one movie called Matrix, and apparently this is higher up in the order of movies, this particular open movie database. Okay. Let's search for another one. Something maybe more action-like. Okay. Oh boy. Rare book dealer Joe and Garda take a summertime haunt John the seashore. It doesn't seem like the Fast and Furious I was hoping for. Okay, one more time, bear with me. Some icon of a movie which will certainly pop up correctly. Oh yeah. Okay, so enough with the app. This is just front end. It can be anything. So let me show you something which will display to you the advantage of this solution, which is speed. For me, the speed was very impressive. So let's go to the data part, check out the movies. Let's do something like this, and over here something like this. Okay, I'm about to edit by hand the record for the movie poster over here. So let's edit the Fast and Furious. The poster is over here. So let's put inside this particular image I had in my clipboard. Totally random image. Okay, and now 3, 2, 1. It's over here. So, well, for me, it was very fast. Maybe for you, it's not so impressive. For me, it was. So, actually, this is basically it. But do you remember the part when I told you about that this code is so old and I barely recognized it? Well, fortunately, I made notes 6 months ago, and they are available in a They are available on my blog of sorts, and so you can check it out and try to recreate all that stuff. And do I have anything to add? Well, certainly with my presentation, we will be able to catch up with the schedule because it is very short. So maybe conclusions. Okay, to conclude, Hasura is a pretty great solution to create your own backend of implementation when you don't know how to backend. Me, myself, I thought I knew how to make some CRUD app in Node.js, but it took me weeks, even months, just to finish all the letters in the CRUD acronym. And with Hasura, I obtained the same results in a matter of, I don't know, 3 days. And I was being lazy. So is it production ready? Well, I don't know. It certainly has solutions for some professional, serious business stuff, like those actions or events or remote schemas, and it also has authentication, which I didn't implement myself. And well, to answer that question, I think you would have to do your own research, because this presentation was going to be unopinionated, but okay, Hasura is great. So yeah, that's about it about the unopinionated presentation. And thank you very much. I'm ready for your questions. Please be gentle. You're muted, Piotr.
Yes, thanks for telling me. So applause again. Thank you very much for this presentation, Piotr. And yeah, there is a great applause, I think, on YouTube now going on, but no one can hear. So okay.
No screw up this time.
No, all right. So now, Piotr, you're ready for questions. We still have a bit time, so at least one question, please, for Piotr. Piotr, I have a personal question. When are you going to be a mid or regular developer? Because I feel that it's your third or fourth presentation on WarsawJS, and always you call yourself a junior.
I am proud of being a junior.
Okay.
Yeah, junior for life.
that explains a lot. So you're a Peter Pan programmer.
Yeah, it sounds like a entry from a book on psychology.
Okay, well, all right. So I can't see questions.
Great,
So,
another comprehensive presentation on my side. So
yeah, so
good for me.
you explain everything. So yeah, there is applause from Wash, also still not visible, but yeah. So Piotr, can you join us on Remo? I hope you have a special table there. I mean, dedicated table to you. Okay, there is one question.
We have a question.
There is one question. Gone Drone asks you. So with Hasura, say you have loaded a model that has a foreign key and the contents of the linked subordinate raw change. Does this propagate?
And a great question. So what I'm really this should be done in person, because then I would reverse this question. What would you do in that? What do you think about that question? But yeah, it's all up to me. I am barely I'm stressing out right now because, okay, let's get it out. I barely understand this question. Okay, so foreign key in a database and the contents change. How does this propagate? So I can tell a joke, and someone in the comment section could give me a hand, maybe. So like a dad joke. Yeah, because this is a hard one. I got stumped, actually.
Okay, no worries. Maybe someone on Twitter will answer this question from Hasura, because I also have no idea how does it propagate.
Well, the universe does not want me to have a flawless presentation.
Okay, so thank you very much, Piotr, for this, and please join us on Remo. We will have it there. And yeah, and look, respect for your courage. There is respect for your courage. So yeah, see you on Remo, Piotr. Thanks a lot, and yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. So the next person here is Jacek Migdał. Jacek Migdał, can you hear us? Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Jacek. Awesome, you're here. I need to mention that Jacek is from a company that is also sponsoring WarsawJS, and that's Sumo Logic, huge company actually now. When you joined the Wall Street, Nasdaq. I mean, it was I was so surprised and amazed with this fact, and yeah, I think you're going to mention this in your presentation, right?
Yeah, and I could tell you, that will be the end, at the end of the presentation, but there will be, and we are proudly sponsor of WarsawJS. That's yeah.
Okay,
and also the previous presentation was very close to my heart, because at some point I talk about Meteor, and to some degree it was already in comment, but that was my also memory. You want to create app and you don't know what to do much. So Meteor was at some point technology to go, but it kind of stagnated, and Hasura seems to be the new way to go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. You actually had this presentation 4 years ago in 2016 in December at WarsawJS. so yeah, that's coincidence and continuation. So maybe that's the new Meteor actually. So okay. So Jacek, you have 25 minutes and questions then. So good luck, and I also hope you will join us at networking, so we can ask you more individual questions.
Cool. So let's start. So as previous presentation was the speaker was forever young, and I'm kind of like how to grow up presentation. That would be some part of my story. And that's like, it would be more career story than technological one. But, I think for the late evening, some relaxed one is also could be also enjoyed. And, just FYI, this is like, all views are mine. I'm not representing my sponsor of WarsawJS at these talks, but, So it's like my story was that, I was like, engineering by heart. So, I start coding very early on. In high school, I participate a lot in algorithm competition. I joke that I always was hacking frontend, but I was like quite serious backend developer from C++, Java. And I was lucky, and it will be a story how I was lucky to get some internship, was lucky to have like a broad option of spectrum, picked at some point quite unusual one that didn't look that great, but it ended up being quite successful, and that's what I would like to tell you about. So the motivation when I'm giving you this talk, that I believe Poland is in a very interesting situation. On one hand, we have like so many great engineers. We are creating new frameworks like SQL, things like that. A lot of people work, like if you look how many Polish people work on, I would say, top employees, very decent number, right? If you look how well we are doing in terms of computer science education, great. We are great in algorithm, great in capture the flag competitions. But on the other hand, if you look at the other spectrum, is like, there's like very few product companies based in Warsaw, based in Poland. And I would say in terms of how many engineers we have and how many unicorns, or like these companies that end up being very successful, yes, you could argue CD Projekt Red, you could argue about the others, but I would say very few. So why we have like this big disproportion and why it matters? Maybe having startups is not a big thing, but I argue that it's like a big thing because it gives you free things, right? And yes, I heard taxes, but I would say Sweden got much higher taxes, and they have like Klarna, they have Spotify, so not necessary. I would say we pay less taxes. So I would say startups could give you free things. One of them is power. If you want to be, I would say, rule like a good empire, I would say, like, if you're a politician, in fact, you couldn't do much. You just vote as your leader or your party says. So in fact, being CEO of the company gives you like a huge power, which some people like to rule. I would say for the software engineers also, it gives you freedom. You could do whatever you want. It could also give you money, not in terms, you're not only selling, like hours of your life, you could earn several magnitude times more money. And also you could make like a huge impact, right? Like, it's good to do some community work presentation, but sometimes companies are, I would say, the vehicle of making like the big social change in the fastest way possible. So there are like a three motivations why you may want to start them, and that's why a lot of people join them. And I would say why we have a lot of great engineers, I would say that's partly thanks to the communism, thanks to this system that, wasn't working that great, but, got huge belief in engineers. So, in communism, economy, politician, a lot of things doesn't matter, but it matters to have a lot of good engineers. So you could build the roads, you know how to do that. So thanks to that and good school of mathematics, we have like in Poland quite good strong tradition of engineering. A lot of people want to do that. There is a lot of good schools, a lot of good tutorials. We also have a lot of, I would say, algorithm competitions that also like, helps to educate even more talent. But I would say the underlying message behind all of that is that, if you solve hard problems, very cool technical problems, all things will follow. Which if you work as a software engineer, sometimes that might seem true. You solve hard problems, a lot of companies would like to hire you. But for company building, that's not all, right? And I was, in retrospect, very ingrained with this belief, and I believe a lot of you probably are too. So when I joined university, I was thinking, do the hardest things, algorithm competition, academia, do as many courses at the university as you can, do research. And then, in the second research, I would say in Derry, in Ireland, I reached the cliffs of Moher's, physically and also like mentally, that, you know, I learned that in software is not that there are some clever academia researchers that invent a new framework and then, you know, everybody else use it. No, it's like every engineer could in their spare time do that. Moreover, like many companies, like, you know, React didn't came from academia. React came from Facebook, right? And pretty much every recent invention in computer science, you much rather trace to, I would say, industry than academia. So I made that realization that, you know, it's not about smartness, it's about joining the industry. So I got the big dream to go to the place where those changes happen. So what was that place in, like, I would say 2009? I would say that was like, you know, Silicon Valley. So thanks to this previous research, I was working on graphic cards using for non-graphical things. I went to internship at NVIDIA, and going to USA was like, it was doable from University of Warsaw, but it wasn't that easy. And after you make all of that hard work, you know, the USA, California was great. But on the other hand, I would say the daily job was, oh, you need to fix these memory leaks, right? I would say maybe JavaScript, you still could leak memory, but in C and C++, it's like a big deal. So you do these basic things. Luckily, I could return to do something more interesting, which was like, you know, if you look, this is like silicon wafer, and this silicon wafer is cut into pieces, and each of these pieces is like, you know, GPU, graphic card. So that's what like NVIDIA does, like pretty much designs like how this GPU should look like, which is really hard because today it's like a billions of elements. So pretty much, you know, graphic cards even back then were like, you know, almost like writing software, but with like really poor tooling. So you write almost like, you know, very complicated hardware with tooling from early Internet Explorer's days. And on the top of that, you know, it takes about a quarter to compile, right? So imagine that you write like a complex software project, but you just could run this every once per quarter. And that's the world of the hardware, that's why the hardware is really hard, and that's why very few companies manage to do that, because you need so many simulations to make that happen. And back then I was working how to make some software to make some abstraction in CUDA that, you know, the different types of memory are pretty much the same. And even the slowest software development, which is like several times slower than I would say front-end, like, you know, kernel development, was still like so fast to hardware. So that was like interesting research, but the learning was that, you know, if you want to learn, it's better to move, and especially early on in your career, it's better to move like, you know, with things that move on much shorter iterations, because you could learn so much. So, and that was, I would say, my second biggest misprediction of my life, that, you know, I was thinking, okay, why do this hardware is so hard, so slow, things like that, even as the fastest hardware companies. And, you know, at some point, Intel almost annihilated NVIDIA. But then what I missed, the fact that, you know, this NVIDIA CUDA could actually end up like a huge thing, thanks to, I would say, first cryptocurrencies and later deep learning. So I could be there, but, you know, I somehow chased the next crazy things, which was Facebook. I would say Facebook in 2011, it was like very famous. There was even like a movie, Social Network, that probably many of you have seen. So maybe you could write in comment if you have seen. I would say if you have seen Social Network movie and enjoy some particular part, I could like either debunk that or like confirm that. Like, you know, I was in Zuckerberg home, so, you know, with that. And Facebook was like completely different style of work. It was more, I would say, this crazy land of hackathons, of like, you know, oh, let's ship like some change to production on like, you know, merge code on the first day, and, you know, ship something to production on the first week. Which in 2011, and like company with 1,200 full-time employees, 1,000 interns, that was like crazy thing. And this was like, you know, life-changing, because everything was moving so fast. But on the other hand, everything was exploding. So, you know, on the first day of work, you know, after a very inspiring speech, you go to your manager, and your manager spends 20 minutes with you. Then they get paid with some issue. They run away and forget about you for the next few days, right? And, you know, because, you know, they apparently wrote like a chat for few hundred millions of users. by 2 people in less than half a year, and it worked, but it was breaking all the time. And that's when they hit the limits of MySQL. So they like start to use some proper database. But what happened is that instead of Cassandra didn't work, so they open source, and then they start using much simpler database called HBase. So I end up optimizing some of those. So if any of you ever use chat, I change your data format of your message internal. So thank you. And Facebook was like very inspiring because of this fast pace, even in our lands. But what I was thinking at some point that it must be like a bubble. Life at Facebook was so great, so much cash, so much, private chefs with cafeteria, things like that. But this company wasn't really making any money back then. And, I was thinking, company making like $1 billion in revenue, worth before IPO 80 or $100 billion, that must be a bubble, like clearly like a bubble, right? And yes, a lot of early Facebook case back then were like, just resigning. Why they were resigning? And some people at the dinner table talk, oh, maybe he make $4 million out of his stock. Other like 12 million, maybe 8. And people were like discussing, but everybody agrees that was somewhere between $4 to $12 million. Because in USA, if you join startups, you not only get your, I would say, monthly salary, but you also get some of the shares. So if your company or option to buy those shares at a really low price. So if your company gets really successful, you could make enormous amount of money. So while saying that, I was thinking, okay, and I make this prediction that Facebook is just a bubble because that seems very natural. They were giving insane offers, but paying in their stock, not like, just regular dollars. Google was about to launch Google Plus. And, what could happen? I make this prediction. Facebook is way bigger than that. But then I talked to those early Facebook guys, if that's like a bubble and they're already some of them leaving, how to find the next Facebook. So the answer I get was brutal. Oh, the best and brightest people of the world couldn't reliably predict what will be the next Facebook. So how dare you, cutting out not HR compliant things, developer from Central Eastern Europe could figure out what's the next Facebook. But if you're interested, just follow the smart money. Look, these are like, I would say, 6 top venture capital, so investors who invest in all of those companies. Look where they're investing in early companies and try to find companies that they're invested and also like, they, I would say, and you also got some intuition about the business model. So that's how I entered through like this Greylog partners to world of stealth mode startups. So companies that didn't even have proper web page, or the web page were looking like, oh, we look for Scala hackers and some JavaScript developers. That was the full website. And they were like, usually very small, like less than 20 people. And some of them were making things that I didn't really understand why it may be important, like virtual databases. But the one that hit my buzzwords were like, was saying that it will work on public cloud, that the cloud is the way how you would run all of this software, which today seems obvious, but I would say in 2011, a lot of people look at cloud, like AWS cloud, as a toy. They will do logs, which I found super important because at Facebook, I couldn't query logs. And querying logs at Facebook scale was harder than writing Linux kernel drivers. Like, just that's poorly Hadoop, MapReduce jobs back then, that was like extremely hard to do. And they were using some cool technologies like Google Web Toolkit for front-end, Scala. So I think all of these smart choices. I think it's somewhere smart. Some of those technologies didn't turn up that well. So I ended interviewing. They asked me to drop everything and join. I couldn't do that. But then with some drama in between, I finally, around lunchtime, sent them some code showing them actually very motivated to work with them. So they let me in. But that was like very weird recruitation. Like first I passed, then they say no, then so, but eventually. And I managed to join SumoLogic in 2012 when there were about like 20 engineers, 20 employees around the lunchtime when they released their first product. It was like, software as a service, logs. So pretty much sell all of your logs to cloud, and then you could query, do all of the analytics, find all of your bugs in SumoLogic. I joined as an intern. Later, I moved to USA. And it was like a very interesting ride because this startup, I would say, to some degree, got a great blueprint. It got like great investors. So it was a startup that already got like, a lot of investors early on, professional CEO. It was very well structured. It got, I would say, great. It got all trades, big trends right that eventually people will use cloud. It figured out that the money is in enterprise sector. And especially those, I would say, early days are super interesting from educational point of view, because you could see the whole company, all the deals, go to lunch with salespeople every week, build a lot of relationships, and pretty much see how the whole thing came to be, which is like really harder later on. And I don't know how many of you work in enterprise startups, but my piece of advice, anytime you do like a tool for developers, there is not much money in selling like, $50 license to some company, because then you are competing with open source and it's really hard. But with developer tooling, all of your money is for the clients that pays you on average, I would say like $70,000 or $80,000 per year, a lot of money. And the goal of these enterprise startups is like to chase those like bigger clients. And it's all about how much you could get those annual recurring revenue. So, what annual recurring revenue is almost like you have some subscription like Netflix and how much money of that. So usually enterprise startup wants to, at the first year, get at least $1 million in sales, like a few $1 million, and like multiplied by a few times during first years. And it's like, on quarterly basis. So every quarter there's like either you get few big deals or not. So it's daily life is like very intense because you don't have mature product. All of those enterprise customers want some like custom features, and you need to balance how that you want to build some like generic product, and on the other hand still close deals. And there's a lot of, I would say, situations when you're like very close to be on the top of the world because you close one or two big customers, or you could miss someone because of some very simple mistake on things like that. And in hindsight, also, I would say every big company that got usually big potential, initially they look very flawed. So for example, like, how many, I think quite a few people may have watched like Silicon Valley sitcom. And in the first series, there was like this whole argument about the box thing. So actually one of the early employees of SumoLogic was consultant on this HBO show. And this whole discussion where all of the engineers were a believer in software as a service, release as frequent as you want, don't maintain a legacy version, things like that. All of the sales people from like, traditional Boston area, they were like, oh, you need to be able to download and install it in someone's data center. Why is this cloud here? So there was like a never-ending argument of this sort. And to some degree, we were, I would say, too early, a little bit too early with the cloud thing, that, everything will go to cloud. But eventually, at some point, it was obvious, and so many people started to moving to cloud because they don't want to manage, I would say, system, like especially log system. It's kind of like, emergency system. So it often got like a spike of data, spike of usage, and you want to work it really reliable during those critical periods when all of those installed software usually break in this worst moment. So from having something that looked initially as like, why would anybody trust to send data to you, eventually it started looking really good. And that, as with every startup, you need to know like that kind of flow is almost like playing poker and know who is the sucker on the table. But what the biggest change was like, the life could move on. And probably that would be story as many others. But at some point of my life, I with my wife decided that, it's like a point of returning from California. It's maybe not the best, it's a good place for the journey, but not for the settling down there. And I got a really good reputation back then. I shipped a lot of software, but eventually returning. So the founders really work hard to keep me at the company. But working remotely with California is like really hard. It's like a 9-hour time difference. It's really hard to work in those short iterations. So I returned from California and was like fairly clueless, and that's how I looked like. That's my picture. But that triggered like some mindset switch that I could no longer be this person that I would just tell like, oh, I will code you as many widgets as you want. I need to do something that our CEO would appreciate, that, I need to figure out how to solve some important problem that will change the life of the company. And there was a lot of chaos, a lot of jungle. It was mostly like, I would say, organic rather than like having a big plan. But what I figured out, like, what was the biggest problem I knew, that, we were wasting so much money on this public cloud. Because the original people that you hire at Sumo were great prototypers, that they could build a lot of stuff quickly, but they weren't that interested in optimizing efficiency. So, and at some point, those investors which funded us asked questions of when are you going to start making money? And it turned out that we primarily spend money that we earn from the customers on AWS. And that wasn't really like a sustainable way. So, and actually in Poland, there's a lot of, I would say, people that study algorithms, that like those optimization struggles. I got some idea how to solve that. Yeah, and that, like, I would say the why I picked those ideas, that was methodological. So I was thinking that, that was like very easy to justify. Like, if you show some graph and you show that you'll be 2 times more efficient, anybody will buy that argument. And what I work on is, instead of having like one clever idea how to optimize, and there were like some people wanting to have that, instead of like very methodological look, what's the probability of this idea of succeeding, how costly it is, how much money is going to save, pretty much having like very systematical way. I managed to get some initial success for a month or 2. And then eventually, like, people ask me, okay, what do you need to make this successful for next 10 months? And I say, like, hire a few people. So I ended up like hiring a few people, and then I haven't really planned it, but I ended like being more manager than I would say engineer at some point. So I started hiring quite a lot of people, initially very slow, later like more. And that's where I would say the career paths completely change, because as engineer, you need to work out details and all of the things. But as a manager, I would say the best way to be successful is to hire like great talent. Okay, there's like one question: what means the idea is valid? I would say you could do some proof of concept. You could look at AWS build. You could do some prototype and see if in some testing environment this would work or not. So that's the question, whether the idea is valid. But maybe that was about cost. Maybe I'll answer about the company later on. And as a manager, what you need also to do is like make sure that the team setup is really good. So you know what people are working on, what is their idea, how do you measure how productive they are, or things like that. And also like communication is like super important, both how you train people, how you onboard them locally in Poland, and also how well you could communicate across to people in different offices. And this proved approach successful, but anytime if you work in your career, you know that there is so much you can do if you just save money or do some infra. Eventually, if you want to be more successful in the company, you need to start making some money, right? In every company, usually if you make money, it's more important than saving money. But the problem with creating product, it's quite complex. You not only could rely on having few backend people, you also need to hire, I would say, front-end people. You also need to have good relation with product managers, UX, hire them or work with someone. And that's quite hard. And we started, I would say, 2 years later to work on one of the projects like metrics. which after some very windy road eventually start working and selling. But that was like much harder. But on the other hand, that like grown up office by a lot. Today, people primarily work on this product, not just on not only on infra. And that way we build like one product called metrics and later second product called tracing. And that's pretty much, I would say, and that's with all of those products and the company growing during that time, Sumo Logic, even though I would say 2020 was a very, I would say, weird year in terms of COVID, economical crisis, things like that, we still managed to IPO pretty much from a parking lot outside of in California with over 2 billion valuation and 70 engineers in Poland, which is like 70 employees out of 300 in product development team worldwide, and we are still growing. So maybe what I would like to like think for you, and that's like the advice that usually it's good to think about your career and like what do you want to do and like make conscious choices. And sometimes I would say the best place to start is like, you know, where you could learn the most, and also like pick some place that's like quite successful. I would say this in middle that, you know, it's already, you feel some convictions that will be successful, but you don't take the full risk, and you could, I would say, sometimes learn the most if you join something that's going well and you could contribute that. But even if you do usually the road would be windy. There is a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that didn't come as planned. So I would say the persistence and the fact that you could execute and continue to always be executing is like a key. And also I should tell you with all of those, I would say, successful speeches on, there should be, I would say, disclaimer from survivor bias. So like never stop buying lottery tickets, no matter what anyone tells you. And you could judge if my presentation got some merit or it's about buying lottery tickets. But in fact, nah. Survivor bias is like a thing, because out of those 5 companies I was interviewing, only Sumo Logic was successful. So maybe my intuition was right, or maybe I was lucky, but that's it. And thank you for hosting me here, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Congratulations, Jacek. Amazing presentation, and it's all fact-based. 70 out of 200
300.
Poland, right?
So 300. Out of 300, yeah.
Out of 300. And does it also convert to shares? Also this kind of part of this great success of Sumo?
So I would say shares would be very proportional, but you know, the number of shares allocated to employees is like around like 10 to 15%. So, you know, you could do the math.
Wow. So, wow. Jacek, so that's absolutely amazing. There were some questions, but you managed to answer them during your presentation. So I think that maybe the next step is to go to. Oh, there is one from Philip. Thanks. What do you think? Is it better to be good at one particular technology, or to be more flexible but not a specialist in any of them? I think it is difficult to combine the two without breaking the work-life balance.
So I would tell, like, you know, at the earlier stage you are, it pays more to be flexible. So if you join like a startup, the fact that you can do anything, that's like your key advantage. The later you go in company life, usually being more specialist pays off, because by the time you have like several front-end people, it makes like a nice stand to be able to do some UI, but it's like more like a stand than like a real value. So I would say be specialist later on. So it depends what are you shooting for. I would say early companies, I would say being generalist pays off. And with the work-life balance is like, you know, I would say it's quite hard sometimes, like at the early stage, to have like a great work-life balance, but it's very important not to burn out, because I've seen cases that, you know, people burn out early on in their life, and it's very hard to recover from that.
Okay, So yeah, great answer. I think there would be much more questions to you on Remo. So I post to everyone now the link to our Remo. And I hope we can continue the networking. Jacek, will you stay with us?
Yeah, I will stay.
Awesome. So
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And yeah, the last thing I wanted to say is that we want to be very thankful to our sponsors. So Tencloud, Allegro Tech, Fresha, Packhelp, PostClick, Prisma, Sumo, Logic, and Xfang. Yes, these are our sponsors of this event. The next WarsawJS will be next year. So also happy holidays, and thank you very much for listening and being with us. And yeah, just stay in touch, and yeah, we're there with you on Slack, and let's go now to Remo. See you soon.